Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about the fear of happiness. Now, do you believe that you don't deserve happiness? Or that being happy is somehow a bad thing because you can't hold on to it or it will never last? Perhaps when things are going well in your life or your relationships, you start to get anxious because you fear it will never last. Or maybe you actively avoid doing things that give you joy because you just think it's a waste of time. So what's going on here? Why is it that some people deny themselves the simple pleasure of being happy? How is our inner child involved in this self-sabotaging mindset? And how can we learn to love and embrace happiness in our life? Okay, David, so why is it that some people are really scared or really fearful about being happy in their life?
And this is such a great question because this is more common than what you'd think. I was surprised how many people have this kind of worst case scenario, this negative mindset going on in their mind all of the time. And this touches on quite a few of the Wu Wei Wisdom model techniques. It's definitely about the inner child. It's definitely about not accepting that you create your emotions. And it's also a chance for you to try using the flip technique.
Okay, so if things are going good in my life, I'm on track, maybe with my job, I've just met a new partner, things are going well, but then I have this gnawing sense like, oh, this is not going to last. Don't get too comfortable with this. You don't deserve to feel good like this. What's behind that kind of negative self-talk?
So I would, first of all, if this is you that Alex has just described, stop using the word, I have a sense, because this is the misunderstanding, because this is what your inner talk is, the inner critic that I call the inner child. And it's the inner child saying these things. It's saying, oh, this will all fall apart. This won't last. You'll get it and somebody will take it away from you. It's definitely not worth getting. And you see the reason why I like calling it the inner child. It's very childlike kind of conclusions and techniques that you're coming to. And this is what we're trying to break. So first of all, own it. Own it as your inner child. Don't say I feel or I have a sense, or all those other words that are making you the victim of your feelings, and own it and say, I believe, here comes the flip, I believe this will not last. And then you can ask yourself the golden thread. Why do you believe it won't last?
Okay, so I've got loads of questions there, David. So that inner child is that part of our mind that we can sometimes describe as our ego or our emotional mind.
Yes.
It's giving us the negative self-talk. It's giving us the feelings. I feel it's not going to last. I feel it's going to be a disaster. I feel I don't deserve this. And you're saying, I turn it round to say, I believe, and then question, why is it you believe those things?
Okay, so it's very important though, Alex, because this is where the first step of the going down, often I talk about in these videos, the railway track and the junction. The first step is when you go down the wrong track, is when you say, I feel, or I think you said, I sense.
Yeah.
You see, that what you're doing there, you're not owning it. We talk about accountability or owning it. When you say, I feel, I have a sense, it's like a gut feeling. It's a rumbling in my tummy. What you're doing is all the time is making yourself a victim of your emotions. And I say in all of my videos, how can you be a victim of the emotions that you're creating? So once you do not challenge that, you're right away, you're going down the wrong track and you can't do the golden thread technique correctly. Now, we've demonstrated the golden thread 2 or 3 times, but for those of you who are new and coming into this for the first time, the golden thread is like reverse engineering. It's like, as you said once, I really liked it. It's like that Hansel and Gretel following the breadcrumbs. So you start with your emotional feelings, and instead of saying, I feel, when you're doing the Wu Wei Wisdom technique, ban the F word. Stop saying I feel. Replace it with one of these 3. I think, I choose, I believe. And those 3 give you back ownership. So instead of saying, I have a sense that this will go wrong, you could say, I believe this will go wrong, or I think this will go wrong, or I choose for this to go wrong. And what that does, it gives you puts you on a different track, and it allows you to look at the same situation through a different filter.
Okay, so if we just role play this a little bit, if I'm a client and I'm coming to you and I say, I feel everything's going to go wrong in my relationship.
I'd stop you.
Yeah, and then you'd say, okay, Alex, identify the thought, the belief, or what you're choosing here. Take ownership of this.
That's right.
Of this. And I say to you, okay, well, I believe that when good things are happening in my life, that it's all going to end in disaster. That's what I believe. And that gives me the red light emotional feelings, anxiety.
And that also gives you ownership, and it shows you whether that belief will create a red light feeling. And when you're creating a red light feeling in this model, it always tells you you've disconnected away from your Shen or your spirituality or your authenticity, whichever word you are more comfortable with. So right away, we know right at the beginning when you've created the red light, now you've done the work and you've changed it out. I believe, I think you said, this will go wrong.
Yeah.
Then the next question is, why? Why do you believe it's going to go wrong? Let me give you a tip here now. You've got to watch the inner child now, because it will do what we call the dump. Blah, 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 talk forever. You want to keep it very concise. Mm-hmm. Try and get it to say, I believe it will go wrong because. And that keeps it really tight and really on message. And then you can go and do the reverse engineering. So I think you said, I believe it will go wrong.
Yeah, I believe it will go wrong, and therefore...
No, because?
Because it's gone wrong in the past, and it's been a disaster, and I've had my heart broken, I've got my hopes up.
So you see exactly what the inner child has just done now? Now the inner child's now dumping all the other stuff. I've had my heart broken. That's the feeling. I've been let down, and all of this. So what you're saying is you believe it will go wrong in the future because it went wrong in the past.
Yeah, but David, I just want to be clear here that those things actually happened. I did have my heart broken in the past. I did have relationships that went wrong in the past. Yes. The things that were going right did go wrong. That's the truth. We're not denying that truth, are we?
We are not denying that truth. But what we are doing is changing the perception on that truth, and to say that is what I would call cause and effect, or the law of attraction. Let me ask you, if you truly believe that something is going to go wrong, are they more likely to go right or wrong? And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. Now, what people use is exactly the role play that Alex is doing, is saying, well, it always goes wrong. It will always go wrong. Well, it will always go wrong if you have the same belief system. Yeah. And that's why you have to examine and bring out that belief. I always find with my clients, the belief comes out like kicking and screaming, and you have to bring it out. Because what you're doing is saying to me, well, David, I believe it will go wrong because I've had a belief that it will go wrong, and it has gone wrong. Well, of course, but that's no proof why it can go wrong as in the future unless you maintain the same belief.
Well, before we dig down a little bit deeper into this kind of role-playing of this belief system, I just want to focus on this law of attraction thing. What you're saying is that if I'm in a new relationship and things seem to be going well, I'm happy, and then all of a sudden this negative self-talk kicks in.
You create the negative self-talk.
I create the negative self-talk. By the law of attraction, I then start to focus on, oh, that person doesn't like me. Oh, they're not ringing me often as they should. My inner child starts to look for more evidence, like almost miles ahead, to prove that what the inner child believes, that it is going to go wrong. So I then start to focus on picking up on negative things. I potentially become more needy, or potentially more manipulative, or more skeptical, or less open, less free, less giving in my relationship, wanting to protect myself more because my inner child is telling me that this is going to go wrong, and I'm believing the inner child. And that's what we mean by the law of attraction. We focus only on the negatives.
That's exactly what I mean, Alex. You are creating an energy of negativity that you're walking into and attracting all around you, because the example that you use is exactly right. You will miss out all of the good things, and you will just focus on, the example you did. Oh, he hasn't texted me. Oh, he came, he was 10 minutes late. Oh, he did this. Oh, he did that. Or she did this, or she did that. You will be focusing on the evidence to prove the conclusion that you've already created. You've already created a conclusion that this will go wrong, and now you're backfilling the evidence which proves your case. Because this is why it's so paradoxical, because when your case is proven and it does go wrong, what do you say? There you are, look, I was always right. Well, because you're always right, because that's the energy and the momentum and the chi flow that you've created. So this is what I'm always saying. Don't look at the results of your belief systems. Look at why you created the belief system.
Yeah. And it's almost like if we create the problem by imagining the problem's going to happen, then, as you say, the inner child will then bank that as another piece of evidence to prove its belief system, that things will go wrong in relationships, things will go wrong in my career, things will go wrong for me.
And that's called circular reasoning. And we call it the carousel of despair, because that carousel of despair of always looking and accepting and experiencing poor conclusions, in a way, becomes very familiar. Now, some of my clients will use words like easier, but it's not easier. This is not easier, else you wouldn't be doing this work. This is uneasy, but what it is very powerfully, it is familiar. And that part of your mind that we're calling the inner child absolutely favors the familiar. It's not so worried about whether it's going to be successful or fail. It is more involved and connected to the familiarity because it wants known outcomes.
Yeah.
It wants to know what's going to happen. And even if that is a self-fulfilling prophecy of negativity, then it will accept that as something it's perceivably in control of. And this is so important, that when you're using these words like Alex is using when she's doing the role play, you've got to be very careful and mindful of the words that you're using, because those little words take you on that wrong track.
Okay, so if we go back to the role play, and where we got to was, I believe this is going to go wrong, that this happiness won't last because it's gone wrong in the past. And you said...
So I would stop you and say, why did it go wrong as in the past?
Because...
Now, did you notice the change of energy there? So you see, the client will always be wanting to do what Alex wanted to do at first. Oh, heartbreak. Oh, let me tell you my sub story. Oh, let me tell you the poo me story. Oh, let me put you on the carousel. And when you're doing this for yourself, try and keep those answers short. You can always go back and do them again and just say, so why did it begin to go wrong? Where was the first instance where it went wrong?
Well, I think that it's I guess like a combination of things, and that sometimes it comes out of the blue. It's like it's all going well, and then my inner child has this expectation that it's going to stay going well, and then when it doesn't, it's like a disaster.
So stop.
And she can't handle that.
No, you see, you don't want to always all the other stuff, and you stop and say, so what is the expectation of your inner child? So when I'm talking to the inner child, exactly. Yeah. Can you see?
I'll bring out the long list now of the inner child expectations that we all have, that all our clients have. So the expectations of the inner child are that there should be no hiccups.
Okay, so I would stop her.
But there's a paradox there, though, isn't there? Because on the one hand, the inner child wants relationships, career, life to be like a red carpet rolled out, and everything to go smoothly, and everyone to understand how wonderful we are, what a good person we are, how we're trying our best. And so the inner child has those expectations. But at the same time, as we said right at the start, the inner child is expecting things not to go right. No. So what on earth is going on?
So this inner child, how many times I hope you're going along with me, the inner child has this expectation of utopian, Disney World, everything the way that the inner child wants it. Is this you? To be put on a pedestal, everybody to think they're wonderful, everything to work out right, everybody to like them, everyone to love them, to be perfect, to get everything right first time, never to be criticized, never to be judged, or never to be compared. So this is the inner child part of your mind, has this utopian worldview. Now, she or he, this has never worked. Now, instead of re-examining that worldview that the golden thread will do, what it does, it then creates another scenario where it can excuse itself. It doesn't change the worldview. It just uses like a child. This is why I love the metaphor of the inner child. How often have you seen your physical children, when they don't get something they want, they slam the door and run to their bedroom, or start crying, or get upset, or try and manipulate you and go, it's not fair, or all of that. And that's exactly what your inner child is doing. No different. It wants something. It's not going to get it. So it's going to have what I call a squealing piglet, a temper tantrum. And most of my clients, even though they're highly intelligent, highly successful, emotionally, they're living their life through a squealing piglet in their emotions. When that part of the mind sees that they're not going to get what they want, they then go on the other track and they start to create all of these negative scenarios.
But if I fast track this self-inquiry role play, and if this was a client, and so you've moved from the emotions, we've moved to the beliefs and the thoughts of an adult, talking about adult experiences, and we're saying don't focus on those, dig a bit deeper. Let's dig right down now to childhood, the kind of origin of this inner child's belief system that we're talking about here. If as a child, and as children we are all, in some ways, we are treated like royalty. We are treated like some of us, not all. Some of us are treated like royalty, little princesses and little princes. Some of us get ignored.
Yes.
All of these experiences affect our perception.
Exactly.
And if an inner child says to you, if a client's inner child says to you, the problem is, when I was younger, things were really good for a time, but then all of a sudden, things went horribly wrong. So that could be an isolated incident of things going horribly wrong, or it could be an ongoing thing where at one point the child felt, as a child, we felt protected, safe, just okay about ourselves and the world around us. Everything was cozy. And then the next minute, there was problems. There was either emotional upset in the household, parents leaving the household, abuse of some kind, or many, many reasons that as children we can suffer this extreme from everything being okay, happy, blissful, contented, to then there being problems. If our inner child thinks that, or somehow draws a link between everything being okay and then everything going wrong, can that be at the root of this, I guess, expectation of disaster? If
Yes.
we get happy, it's going to go wrong.
Yes, that can definitely be one of the roots. So, as Alex has just explained, most children are brought up in an environment where they see their childhood, because all children are codependent. We're codependent on our parents, on our carers. So we're brought up as in a child of being codependent, of wanting things and learning how we get them or how we don't get them. And that's the sense of unfairness. So we see other people or other children getting something that we don't get. So we quite quickly build up this idea of fairness, unfairness, justice, injustice, or wanting something, being disappointed. So you see now as we talk, the inner child's mind is very extreme. We call it the emotional pendulum. Black and white, yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad. There's no Wu Wei in the center, which is our teaching. So the inner child, your inner child, will be viewing and being judgmental on everything. It's either the way it wants it to be or it believes it should be, or the exact opposite. It's disaster. It will never work. It will go wrong. Worst case scenarios. There's the evidence. My heart's been broken and all of this stuff. So it swings violently through these emotions. And what we're trying to do on these videos is to, first of all, to remind you that you are the creator of your emotions. This to me is one of the most powerful, profound, life-changing teachings that you can consider, that every emotion that you experience in your body, you have created. Yes, as a result of an event or a person, but the emotion is yours. And once you can get that, then you can start to analyze your emotions. And this is what the inner child work is about. Because inside of your mind, the characteristic of your mind is this child using emotions, swinging violently, and using the evidence of the unfairness, the injustice, or the ultra protection of saying, I can't cope, it's all too much for me, I'm unlovable, all the things we talk about. And your job as the spiritual, this is why I love so much this analogy of the inner child. Because if you can use this analogy and think about your child as a spiritual child, and then you can become the spiritual parent and you can speak to your child, because we have to teach your child that she or he has now got somebody that they can rely on. They have someone that will take care of them. They have got someone that will take time out and listen to what they're saying and offer them different and other solutions. And this is what I call emotional education. And this is what all inner childs are really lacking, is emotional education. They are just used to responding to the emotions that they're creating.
But when you say, tell your child that they have now got someone that they can rely on, they can respond to, etc., who are you talking about? Who's the someone?
So I'm talking about the adult you, if you would prefer that. Perhaps you would prefer a word like authentic you, the mature you. These words can be helpful but also misleading. For me, I would call it the spiritual you, that inner knowing. that inner wisdom, that sensitivity, that calmness, that peacefulness, that ability to hold that inner child still when it's at its most upset, and to guide it through and to learn the life lessons. Because that's why we call these video life lessons, because you, through your inner child, has encountered a life lesson that you did not understand or have not resolved yet. And now this is your responsibility to continue on your journey, to learn and to accept that life lesson. And rather than the inner child, the spiritual child, and the adult fighting each other, always in conflict, always saying these things like, this will always go wrong. This happens to me, so I can't be happy, can I? This is the inner child talking. I can't be content because somebody will come and take it away from me. Somebody will whip it away from me like they did. Like when I went to school, for instance, for a lot of children, the first day of school is terrifying, terrifying. Or as all of a sudden, as Alex said, they could have been the king of the castle, and they walk in, they suddenly find 20 or 30 other children. And this can be terrifying, but nobody sat down with them, held their hand and guided them through it. And this is when you create that internal emotional separation that we're trying to bring together into a oneness. And this is the Taoist teaching, that we cannot be separate. We have to find a way of oneness and then find the Wu Wei flow for you to flourish and for you to reach your potential.
And so I think, David, there's like two life lessons that you've talked through there. There's the one about not being dependent on other people or other situations for your own happiness. And the inner, obviously, as children, we are dependent and we are more of a hostage, I guess, to circumstances in our environment, whether it's to do with our family setup, our school setup, whatever happened to us. We were kind of blown around a bit more emotionally by what was going on because we didn't have the knowledge or the emotional intelligence to understand that we control our emotions. Yes. But now as an adult, our happiness doesn't depend on our relationships unless we let it. Our happiness does not depend on our career unless we let it. Our happiness does not depend on a lot of external things unless we allow it.
But it's even a little bit more profound and deeper than that, because I would class happiness as an emotion, a green light feeling. You know, nearly all of our videos, and we should do some more videos on green light feelings, most of our videos are concentrating on red light feelings because that's what brings you to us: stress, anxiety, tension, all of these things. But as when I say you are the creator of your emotions, you are also the creator of the green light emotions, the positive emotions, happiness, joy, confidence, love, bliss. All of these are internal emotions that you create. And what we want to be teaching the inner child, as Alex has just explained, do not put your power externally onto others, so you have to manipulate them to create your happiness. That's when we've done a lot of videos on people pleasing. This is a perfect example. People please, try and please others so they're happy with them and they feel good. It's like a reverse. You're doing something to get something when you can create the happiness for yourself. And then you can choose to do what is authentically balanced and correct for you to do.
And so happiness and love and the creation of those green light emotions for yourself kind of go hand in hand. And as David says, we have done lots of teachings on love, self-love, the dynamics of love in relationships. And I will put links to those teachings in the show notes for you. So the second life lesson that you've alluded to is really that we need to teach our inner child through gentle but firm reparenting that life is not about these extremes of being able to maintain extreme happiness constantly and everything going red carpet rolled out right all the time. But equally, when we can't maintain that, but that does not mean everything's a complete disaster, everything's a problem, the world's going to end, because our inner child loves swinging between those two extremes. And we need to teach the inner child that there are ups and downs in life.
Well, that's the subject of this video that somebody wrote in. Why can't I be happy, or why don't I maintain that happiness? And it's because of the emotional pendulum. Because what they're saying is it can only be one extreme or the other. So I can't create the internal happiness. Alex says the red carpet. Somebody else has to roll out the red carpet and then I can walk along it. But what I can create is these negative emotions, these negative outcomes, worst case scenarios. Let's take the devil's view. Let's look at it the worst way. Let's see all the things that could go wrong. And then the inner child gets focused and stuck on that way of thinking. And then, as we demonstrated earlier on in these videos, the results by the law of attraction do go wrong, and then the inner child throws up their hands and say, there you are, told you so. I'm not good enough. Then the 3 lies. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. It must be because I'm unworthy. And so all of the time what the child does is shifting the burden of responsibility away from themselves and onto someone or something else. And what we're trying to do is to flip that over and bring that responsibility back to you. This is your life. You are blessed. You are awesome. You are awesome. Live your life like you're awesome. And as Alex said, in the reality of life, there will be ups and downs. I'm not sitting here saying your life will be wonderful and the red carpet will be out in front of you, because I'd be talking one extreme of the pendulum. I am saying the pendulum will rock in the center, and sometimes you go through bad periods and then you correct it back, because that is what reality is all about. Living in the now, being in control of your emotions, following your authentic path, as I call it, walking in fresh snow. Don't follow someone else.
And so another, I guess, inner child issue that may come up is, so we've talked about the idea of our inner child saying, well, things went wrong in my childhood. Things were great, but things went very bad. Or I witnessed things being great for my parents or my loved ones, and then things went very bad for them. And then, so I think the same is going to happen to me now. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what if the inner child says, when you get down and you do the golden thread and you get down to those kind of childhood experiences, what if the client's inner child says something like, you know what, my inner child believes that she or he doesn't deserve happiness.
So once she gives you a statement like that doesn't involve the emotion, then you do the golden thread. Why don't you deserve happiness?
Because...
Short answers again. Don't let them talk too much.
Because I believe that I need to be better and I'm not good enough, therefore I'm not deserving of happiness.
So now the inner child's, now we've kind of held them down. They've gone into what we call CCJ. Comparing, criticizing, and being judgmental. I believe I should be good enough. I believe I should be better. And so this is now comparing herself as the inner child to other people. So now you've got to find the measuring stick that they're measuring themselves against. So it's going to be difficult for Alex because she's role playing. But then I would ask, so better than whom, darling?
Well, I just know that when I was young, I wasn't achieving enough, or I wasn't as good as my friends at school.
Thank you. So I would always be happy with the first answer. Who said you wasn't achieving enough?
Well, the teachers said, and my parents agreed with them.
Okay. And do you believe that the teacher were correct?
Well, the evidence was there because my grades weren't very good.
And so let's say you wasn't good enough. Is that does that make you not good enough? When somebody does something not good enough for a teacher, does that make the student not good enough?
Well, I was told that I had to keep working hard and I couldn't rest. And my teacher, my parents weren't happy with me until I achieved the correct grades. I could see they were disappointed with me.
And is that you as a person, or is that your skill? Is that your skill set of doing maths or English or geography?
Well, I can see now looking back that was obviously just my skill at maths or my skill at English or my skill at whatever it was I was being tested on at school. But when I was a child, that was really important to me because my teacher's feedback or my parents' feedback told me who I was. And I believed that I shouldn't be happy or content because they weren't happy either with me.
So I would spend a little bit more time unpicking all of this, which is difficult for Alex because she's role playing. But then a really good question, and you know the question because we've done it lots of times. I would bring it back to the mature Alex or the client, and I would say, so therefore, if you believe that that's true, that you're saying, if you had a physical child and they came home from school and the teacher had sent a report saying your child isn't performing well, would you say to your child, well, that's because you're not good enough?
No, and also...
But you're saying it, but you're saying it to your spiritual child.
Yeah.
And there, once you've kind of unpicked, so you understand as all the thing, now you've got to see that you are judging yourself under the criteria that you would not judge anyone else. You are so harsh on yourself. You are so critical. This has now become, remember we said at the earlier, familiar. This familiarity is so comfortable. You're so good at it. You can see how good you're explaining it. And so I have to let the client spend 5 or 10 minutes explaining because they need to get all of this out. And then you say, but these are just judgments from your case, very poor teachers and maybe parents with very poor parenting techniques that were believing the teachers rather than the child. So now what we're doing, once you ask that question, so what would you say to your physical child? If your physical child came back with a report card and said, Mummy, teacher said I'm not doing very well at math, what would you say to your child?
Well, I'd say, let's work together. Let's have a look at if we can improve this. And, you're doing great, and I'd be encouraging. And I think what really struck me from what you said there, David, and I guess what the role play I gave you was that I was saying, well, because of this, because you weren't doing well on your grades and your teachers were dismissing you or criticizing you, I believe that I didn't deserve to be happy. And it really struck home that, oh my gosh, I would never say to my child, you don't deserve to be happy now because you failed your test. It's it's cruel.
Stop. I know you're role playing, Alex, but that's exactly what you're saying to your child.
Exactly. When you reframe it that way.
Yes.
And I guess all of us think these kind of inner child thoughts, these really down on ourselves, negative self-talk, inner child thoughts. Yes. And we say them all the time to ourselves without flipping it that way and without reversing and thinking about it. But it's cruel.
It's like quicksand because it just drags you down, deeper and deeper. And then the emotions get more and more. And that's why the flip is so important. So you just have to get that technique right, listening to the child, Don't let the child keep on going round and round until you're right at the bottom. And then you let that part of your mind unburden. I would think, I know it's difficult for Alex, but that would have taken about 5 minutes just so she can tell you how unfair it was. See, you're right at the end, how unfair it was, how unjust it was. She's a good girl, she's trying her best, but now she's not doing well, and then she does worse. So here's the self-fulfilling prophecy now. So, for instance, that child could have easily said, well, if you think I'm bad, might as well not even try. Can you see how this now starts now from a child of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? This is defining their lives. Or they could have said, well, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work even. I'm going to dedicate myself. I'm going to judge myself. I'm going to judge what others be. I've got to be top of the class. I've got to be. And so they're driving themselves on the other extreme instead of finding their Wu Wei. And when it was your physical child, as you say, okay, sweetheart, let's find out what is it you didn't understand about this maths exam, or what is it you're finding difficult? Let's see if we can work that through. So the technique is you do that now to yourself. Exactly the same technique, not complicated. Remember, you are the spiritual parent. You're talking to your inner child, the spiritual child. And so there's nothing for you to learn. You would just do it in exactly the same way as you would to any of your children or your nieces or nephew that came to you with that problem. You wouldn't even say that to your nephew that came to you and said, auntie, uncle. You wouldn't even say, well, yeah, let's have a look at this record card. Yeah, I can confirm you're not good enough. You wouldn't say that, but you say it to yourself. And that's what's going to make the change in your life today. And then you start to position your perceptions, and that gives you better outcomes and starts to put you on your more authentic Wu Wei path to health and happiness and well-being and flourishing.
Because if you continue with the inner child story that until they reach perfection, until they prove themselves, until I prove myself, I can't be happy. It's like a heavy weight hanging over you every single day with every single thought and every single decision. And that's why we self-sabotage, as you say.
Well, can I just say something on that? Because that's something that my clients bring up quite regularly. They say, oh yeah, I can see this now. Now you've explained it to me. I can see this. But David, I don't think this is every day. But this is why I call your belief system. This kind of programming is working all of the time. And so it's the way you perceive reality in the outside world is through that belief system. Of course, you don't sit on your bed and say, well, when I was 7, my teacher said I was no good and therefore I'm no good. Of course, you don't say that. I'm not saying that. But that's gone deep into your subconscious mind, if you like. I prefer belief system. You might want to call it programming. And the golden thread digs back down into the programming and allows you to restructure your own program, because you should be in control of you. And this is the whole teaching. Don't listen to anybody else. Don't listen to me or anybody else, but listen to yourself. Live to your truths, to your integrity, to your honesty. Walk in your footsteps. That's the teaching.
And so if we are holding on to the childhood belief that we don't deserve to be happy, what is the life lesson that we need to gently reparent and teach our inner child with that?
Well, you would have to do the golden thread, because the life lesson will be kind of unique to each one of you. You have to do that. Why don't you deserve to be happy? Why don't you deserve to be happy? Why don't you deserve to be happy? And I would think then you'll find what the life lesson is. It is normally about looking externally for value, approval, validation, and worth. Most of us, the life lesson will circle around that we put far too much importance on what other people think about us. And when somebody criticizes, like the example you used, Alex, when somebody criticizes our work, the child believes that they're criticizing them personally. And so the life lesson in these situations about happiness and about judging yourself will always be about your understanding of validation, value, worth or worthiness, having that love should come externally. So it's all the life lesson will be circling around that type of issue for you.
Great, thank you. And we've done so many
'Cause
teachings
it's so
to
important.
help you with the subject. As I said before, we've got those teachings on love and self-love. We've also got a teaching in the archive on why the inner child self-sabotages. David mentioned this kind of self-sabotaging behaviour. I'll sabotage myself before they get me, and essentially stops and blocks your happiness that way. And we've also got lots and lots of teachings in the archive on reparenting techniques to help you work through this reparenting process and to gently teach your inner child those life lessons. I really, really hope you found this teaching helpful. Please do comment below if you'd like to share your thoughts on it, or share the teaching with someone else who you think would also benefit. David works every week with clients on all of these types of issues, the inner child work. And if you're interested in learning more about David's one-to-one sessions by video call, I will put a link in the show notes below about those sessions too. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Take care. Bye-bye.